The Soviet Union once stood as a titan on the world stage. Its influence stretched across continents. Its military might rivaled that of the United States. For decades, the world watched this communist giant. The Cold War defined global politics, a tense standoff between two ideologies. The USSR seemed an unshakable fixture, a permanent reality. Then, with astonishing speed, it all began to unravel. The foundations, seemingly so solid, started to crack. The collapse was not the result of a great war. Instead, the Soviet Union crumbled from within. The reasons were complex, a mix of long-term issues and sudden triggers. The fall of the Soviet Union reshaped the world map. It redrew political alliances and altered the balance of power. New countries emerged from its ruins, old conflicts reignited while new opportunities for cooperation arose. The end of the Cold War was heralded by many as a victory for democracy. Yet, the transition was not always smooth. Understanding this collapse is crucial to understanding the world we live in today. This narrative will journey from the Soviet Union's post-World War II zenith to its final days in December 1991. The Soviet Union's journey to superpower status began amidst the chaos of World War I. The Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, led by Vladimir Lenin, overthrew the Tsarist regime. It promised a new society based on Marxist ideals. A brutal civil war followed. The Bolsheviks, or communists, eventually consolidated their power. They established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, in 1922. This new state was vast, covering enormous swaths of Eurasia. Joseph Stalin succeeded Lenin. His rule was marked by rapid industrialization and brutal repression. Despite this internal terror, the Soviet Union transformed itself. It became a major industrial power. This industrial might proved crucial during World War II. The Red Army played a pivotal role in defeating Nazi Germany. The victory in World War II dramatically elevated the Soviet Union's global standing. The Red Army had swept across Eastern Europe. Soviet-backed communist regimes were installed in Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and East Germany. These nations became satellite states, part of the Eastern Bloc. The Iron Curtain divided the continent into a communist East and a capitalist West. The USSR was now a true superpower. The Soviet Union actively supported communist movements and anti-colonial struggles around the world. This ideological competition with the United States defined the Cold War. The USSR developed nuclear weapons in 1949, ending the American monopoly. Life within the Soviet Union and its satellite states was tightly controlled. The Communist Party permeated every aspect of society. From education and employment to arts and culture, the party line dictated what was acceptable. Propaganda was pervasive. It glorified the achievements of communism and demonized the capitalist West. The state controlled all media. Information from the outside world was heavily censored. Secret police agencies like the KGB monitored the population for any signs of dissent or disloyalty. Despite the repression, the Soviet system provided certain social guarantees. Education and healthcare were free. Unemployment was officially non-existent. Housing was heavily subsidized, though often cramped and of poor quality. However, this came at the cost of individual freedoms. Freedom of speech, assembly, and religion were severely restricted. Travel outside the Soviet bloc was a rare privilege. The Soviet Union's global reach was extensive. It formed the Warsaw Pact, a military alliance of Eastern Bloc countries, as a counterweight to NATO. The launch of Sputnik in 1957, the first artificial satellite, shocked the West. The space race became another arena of Cold War competition. This global projection of power came at a tremendous cost. By the 1970s, the Soviet economy began to show serious signs of strain. A period of prolonged economic stagnation set in, often referred to as the era of stagnation under Leonid Brezhnev. The centrally planned economic system proved ill-suited for fostering innovation and meeting diverse consumer demands. Central planners in Moscow made decisions about what to produce, how much, and for whom. This top-down approach stifled local initiative and flexibility. Factory managers were often more concerned with meeting arbitrary production quotas than with quality or efficiency. Innovation was discouraged because new methods could disrupt established plans. The shadow economy or black market thrived as a response to the official economy's shortcomings. Corruption became widespread, further undermining the system's legitimacy. Section 5. The burden of an empire, military spending and mismanagement. The Soviet Union's status as a global superpower came with an enormous price tag. Maintaining military parity with the United States and supporting a vast network of client states consumed a disproportionate share of the nation's resources. This immense expenditure diverted investment from other crucial areas, such as infrastructure, healthcare, and the production of consumer goods. The decision to intervene in Afghanistan in 1979 proved to be a particularly costly misadventure. The war drained billions of rubles, cost thousands of Soviet lives, and damaged the USSR's international reputation. Beyond direct military spending, the Soviet economic system was plagued by inherent inefficiencies and mismanagement. The central planning system, while capable of achieving specific targets, was incredibly wasteful. Resources were often misallocated. The system was groaning under the weight of its own imperial ambitions and the inherent flaws in its economic model. Section 6. Winds of Change. Gorbachev's reforms, glasnost and perestroika. In March 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He recognized the deep-seated problems facing the country. He introduced two key policies: perestroika, or restructuring, and glasnost, or openness. Perestroika aimed to reform the Soviet economy. It sought to introduce elements of market mechanisms into the centrally planned system. Glasnost, or openness, was intended to create a more transparent and accountable government. It involved easing censorship, allowing greater freedom of speech and the press, and encouraging public discussion of social and historical problems. Gorbachev believed that open debate was necessary to identify and solve the country's issues. For the first time in decades, Soviet citizens could openly criticize the government and discuss previously taboo subjects. Gorbachev also pursued a new thinking in foreign policy. He sought to reduce Cold War tensions and end the costly arms race with the West. Section 7. The genie out of the bottle, unintended consequences of reform. While Gorbachev intended glasnost and perestroika to strengthen the Soviet system, they inadvertently unleashed forces that would lead to its disintegration. Glasnost, in particular, had a revolutionary impact. As censorship eased, long-suppressed historical grievances and nationalist sentiments came to the fore. The newfound freedom of expression also allowed for the organization of independent political groups and movements. More significantly, nationalist movements gained momentum in many of the Soviet republics. In the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, popular fronts emerged, initially calling for greater autonomy, but soon demanding full independence. Perestroika, meanwhile, failed to deliver the promised economic improvements. Instead, it often led to greater economic chaos. The economic crisis further fueled popular discontent and weakened support for Gorbachev's reforms. Gorbachev found himself caught between a rock and a hard place. Section 8. The empire crumbles from Berlin Wall to Baltic independence. The weakening of Soviet control, a direct consequence of Gorbachev's policies, had a dramatic impact on Eastern Europe. In 1989, a wave of revolutions swept across the region, toppling communist regimes one after another. Poland's Solidarity movement led the way, forming the first non-communist government in the Eastern Bloc. Hungary opened its border with Austria, allowing thousands of East Germans to flee to the west. This triggered mass protests in East Germany, culminating in the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989. Gorbachev made a crucial decision not to use Soviet military force to suppress these uprisings. The peaceful revolutions in Eastern Europe further emboldened nationalist movements within the Soviet Union itself. The Baltic states were at the forefront of the push for independence. Section 9. The final collapse and lingering echoes. Legacy of the Soviet fall. The final act in the drama of the Soviet collapse came in August 1991. A group of hardline communist officials launched a coup d'état while Gorbachev was on vacation in Crimea. They sought to halt the reforms, restore centralized control, and prevent the signing of a new Union treaty that would have granted significant autonomy to the republics. The coup plotters declared a state of emergency and deployed tanks in Moscow. However, the coup was poorly organized and met with widespread popular resistance. Boris Yeltsin, the president of the Russian Federation, famously climbed atop a tank outside the Russian parliament building and called on the people to defy the coup. Thousands of citizens rallied to defend democracy. After 3 days, the coup collapsed. The failed coup accelerated the disintegration of the Soviet Union. One by one, the remaining republics declared their independence. In December 1991, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus met and declared that the Soviet Union is ceasing its existence. On December 25, 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned as president of the USSR. The Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time, replaced by the Russian tricolor. The Soviet Union officially ceased to exist.